Time to talk about another Saturday of racing at the Gulfstream Park Championship Meet. I am Gino Bacola here alongside my good friend Barry Spears, the sniper. We're going to talk about Gulfstream's Saturday card for January the 6th. We get to kick off the racing now in 2024. And this is a fun time of the year as we now have these horses that are newly turned 3-year-olds. It's actually doing a little write-up for DRF video we're going to do for social media on Instagram. This weekend, Barry, all the focus really across the country is on the 3-year-olds. We have 2 stakes races for 3-year-olds that you and I are going to discuss. We'll also dish out some best bets. The Jerome for 3-year-olds over at Aqueduct has Derby points up for grabs. Then at Santa Anita, they have the Grade 2 San Vicente on Saturday. Sunday, they have the Grade 3 Santa Ynez with Kentucky Oaks points. So only 2 graded stakes races this weekend in the country, and they're both at Santa Anita. But then all of the other stakes races are major focus on 3-year-olds, these newly turned 3-year-olds.
Yeah, I mean, this is, I always forget that this time of year everything kind of ramps up, especially for the 3-year-olds, and this is quite early. I mean, it's only going to be the 6th of January, and we're already getting into it, which is great. It just speaks well to what's going to happen later on in the year, come Derby time, and all those turf races and the dirt races and everything is just exciting.
So for the purpose of this video, Barry and I are going to talk about races 9, 10, and 11, which are 3 stakes races on the card for Gulfstream Saturday. And we'll also dish out 2 best bets that we have earlier on the card. Barry's going to look at races 1 and 6. I have horses to keep an eye on for races 2 and 7. Like always, we'll be diving into the daily racing form past performances. Shop.drf.com. They have a whole section for Gulfstream Park where you can get PPs, DRF picks, clocker reports every single day. Remember, you can get those clocker reports for Santa Anita and Gulfstream every day. You need help with the first-time starters, surface switches, layoffs, all of that. Any additional info you need, right there. And there's actually a sale going on right now all the way through January 8th. There's a New Year's Day sale, a New Year's sale where you can take advantage of past performances, clocker reports, digital paper, all the stuff that you love to use from drf.com that helps you with your handicapping. You can get discounts on all of it right now through January the 8th. So check out more about that sale. But Barry, we've got some ground to cover for Saturday. Before we started recording, we were talking a little bit about the weather, though. It could be wet out there on Saturday, right?
Yeah, the forecast has it at 50% chance. So I'm gathering it's going to be wet. Whether they take the later races like the 9th, 10th, and 11th off the turf, remains to be seen. I think that's probably a good thing that obviously they're at the end of the card. But I would anticipate a little bit of wet weather for sure.
You're going to get things started for us right off the bat in race number 1.
Yeah, I typically don't do this very often because most of the time, I don't know if you pay attention to cards around the country, but the first race of the day is kind of like a setup. It's
Yeah.
it's usually not the most competitive field. It's kind of something that gets the people that are at the track or betting, you know, kind of a winner under their belt, and it's usually kind of like a gimme. In this sense, or this race on Saturday, this is a really tough race. Um, because you got a bunch of newly turned 3-year-olds. A lot of them are trying synthetic for the first time. A lot of them have run also on the synthetic, but haven't been all that stellar. So I think it's an opportunity where you can beat the favorite. Like the 2 on the dot doesn't look bad. Obviously, dropping down from maiden special weight, maiden optional claimer 50 down into 25. But that horse doesn't seem like, a standout here because there looks to be a lot of speed on paper. You got the 5 Divine, Sky Divine that has some speed. Um, I would think Mobe Princess is probably going to try to force the issue, and even Cajun Dove, who's kind of dropping in, might end up having to kind of get position, and that one's 3-1. And I have no confidence in any of the favorites. That being said, I went to number 9, Smart Jenny. Um, I think this effort that the horse had on September 23rd was not that bad. and dropping down into 25,000, even though it is on the synthetic, might be the best thing for this horse. I think the race sets up a little bit, the pace dynamics set up pretty well for Smart Jenny, and I think there's going to be some improvement here. Um, Again, a field loaded with a bunch of speed horses that really don't know how to run in a 5 furlong race. It's going to be a crazy dash up front, and I think just with the experience that Smart Jenny has and the running style that she has will put her in a really good position to win this race. Whether she wins or not is another story, but I'm willing to take 10-1 on that. And then you got the makeover package getting Lasix first time. Then you see the bullet work on December 23rd. It kind of seals the deal for me. I think this one has a good shot. Probably won't be 10-1 though.
Smart Jenny, going to get you started with a nice price right off the bat in race number 1 for Barry. And the positive is for some reason, if it does rain and these races do get removed, this one will be on the synthetic. So you shouldn't really have to worry about a whole lot of scratches or changes in some of these synthetic races. As we move to race number 2, Barry, I'll give you one. This is a grass race number 2. Race number 2. It's a maiden special weight going 1 mile on the turf course here. I'm going to look to the number 7 in this one. I'm looking at Farm Team, and Farm Team is 12-1 on the morning line. This is the first time that he's going to get a chance to try the turf. They wanted to get on the grass on October 29th. It was a race that was taken off because of a sloppy track. You've seen improvement from him in each of his races based on the buyers, and he's gotten better as they stretched out. I like the fact that he showed speed last time out, career best speed. He was forwardly placed. He was in the mix. He finished 4th in the field of 10. The horse who won that day was a horse named Sneed. Sneed came back out of that race. He went over to Fairgrounds. He won an optional claimer, and he earned an 80 buyer speed figure. He won that race by 7 1/4 lengths. Then he came back in the Gunrunner Stakes, and he finished a good second that day behind Track Phantom, and he earned an 87 buyer speed figure that day. So he lost to a horse named Sneed, who is a very nice horse. So I'm looking at his form overall. I think those 3 races, the way he was improving, the way he was stepping forward, I feel like he was on a nice trajectory. Now he gets Lasix for the first time. He's a little bit fresh, just off for a couple months, and now he should be able to have a little bit of maturity as he's turned 3. He's growing up a bit, and he tries the grass if they're on the grass. This is a horse who actually, if they take off the grass, I wouldn't even really bother me as much because we know he has the experience. But I'm looking at the grass. His dam was second in the only turf start, Padmore. And then when we look at his siblings, he's actually got some pretty nice siblings when it comes to grass success. A horse like Bon Raison was a nice runner, wasn't quite as impactful on the turf as some of the others, like Flying Scotsman, who was a 5-time winner on the turf. Flying Scotsman was really nice. He just had a tough time. I think he had a couple layoffs and some injuries. He was actually a hurdle horse too, and then came back after hurdle races and won a race at Mountaineer, which you don't see often. He's running 2 and a mile 8, and he cuts back and wins at Mountaineer in an allowance race there. Lee Court was a nice horse on both surfaces, turf, synthetic, and the dirt. This is a horse who was really solid on the grass. You have grade 3 winner on turf. You have Barracks Road, who was a multiple stakes winner on the turf. You have King Snake, who was a turf winner. So I'm liking his trajectory already, Barry. And then I look at the pedigree and see that there's been a lot of turf success in this pedigree too. So I think he can keep stepping forward, possibly have a reason to improve even more now on the turf. You have a very capable barn who doesn't ever win at a huge monster 30% clip because they're just more patient with the way they handle their horses and just the way they go about it. I love the fact that Saez jumps aboard here. Lots of things for me to like. This horse has gotten to work on the turf already. Also, major positives for me for the number 7 Farm Team, who's 12-1 on the morning line. Anything 6 or above feels fair in what's a competitive race, and I'd play a win wager on him if he was 7-1 and above.
Yeah, I think you're going to get all of your price because they're going to gravitate to the bigger name connections in this race. Like, um, you'll see the 1 probably take a lot of money, the 2 will probably take some money. The Pletcher horse with Irad is probably going to be way over bet here, and then the Cassie horse is probably going to get bet. So I would hope that you're getting probably around 10 to 1, if not that 12 to 1, maybe even higher. But yeah, you sniffed out that points to this horse being live, especially with the experience. I think this is a good pick.
Foundation, showing a little bit of speed, but I don't necessarily think he needs the lead. You have a good speed rider aboard, some turf here. Farm team, 12 to 1 on the morning line in this one. Barry will take the baton and you will head to race number 6, my friend. This one is an optional claimer, optional 20 first level allowance for Florida breds, going 6 furlongs on the dirt. Talk to us about how you see this race playing out.
Yeah, this is a horse I'm gonna go back to the well with, because I think we were 1 race too soon. And that's, I'm gonna go with number 8, Principia. We picked this horse, or I did, on December 22nd, and the horse ran a bang up race going a mile. And I think that's a great springboard into cutting back into this race, because there's not an overabundance of speed in here. Um, the pace will probably be honest to a little bit slower. Um, and I think this one from the outside is going to get a great trip. Now, again, whether this horse wins or not is a whole nother story. But what I try to do is get horses at a price that will probably have a decent shot with a good trip. And
Good
and
trip,
this one
run
fits
well,
that to a
outrun their
T.
odds.
I mean, you look at that last race, and there's really not many. Exactly. And that's what we're looking for here. And you see that this horse took some action that day. The race prior on December 9th, 56 to 1. And then the next race, they're 960 to 1. Obviously, somebody saw what we were seeing. And I think the cutback will make all the difference here, because that this horse is going to have a little bit of foundation and be able to finish this race off without actually being on the lead. And if this horse actually ends up on the lead for whatever reason, that might even be better.
Principia, drawn well, has some speed, but can sit off and pass horses, should be fit cutting back, puts herself in a good spot. Can she just get a little lucky and finish the job at a big price in here of 15 to 1 on the morning line? That's race number 6 on Saturday at Gulfstream Park. I'll head right next door to race number 7, and then we'll move to the 3 stakes races on the card, races 9, 10, and 11. The 7th race is a turf mile and 16th race. It's an optional 25 first level allowance for a good field of horses, older horses now. Contentious. I think you can make cases for a many in here. Some of the ones towards the outside that I think will get a lot of support. You'll see Macalop, who I think fits, getting back to the grass. Quality G, very honest, always shows up with a good effort. And the 12, I think, is one that might also take a little bit of action in here. I'm going to go to the 5. Barry, Blame the Good Times. This is a horse who most of his career, I think, makes sense when you go through it. And now his last couple of starts that should set him up really well for this. On October the 12th at Keeneland, he was forwardly placed in a race where they went pretty quick early on, and he drew a wide post, and he just had to use some speed to try to get into the race. But it was his first start in 10 months. He hadn't run since January. So he absolutely needed the race, and he ran like that. He was involved early from a wide post, tired, faded, and they went pretty quick early. Then on December the 9th, I thought it was a good effort. He was behind Quality G and Fredo in that very same race, but we can actually watch the race here, which is really nice. That's why we love these DRF formulator past performances. Last race, we were looking at charts. We're looking at race replays. We're looking at pedigree information. So Quality G, Fredo, and Blame the Good Times are the 2, 4, and 5 in here. They all come out of the same race. I'm looking at the 4 is the horse that I like. And he was inside, the fine start. At this point, he's sitting about 5th or so, and that's where he'll kind of stake his spot in that fifth, sixth spot. He's about 3 lengths off the pace in here, and you can just play it out. If you're a trip handicapper, you'll see he's in the third flight, and that's the worst place to be. The second flight, some of the times you can make your own trip. You can work your way around horses. You can kind of back up and angle out. When you're in the third flight and there are 2 sets of horses in front of you, it's so likely that one of these horses is going to stop or back up, and you're just going to be in trouble. And that's exactly what ends up happening here. We watch Blame the Good Times, the 4. He starts to cruise back into it, and he's going to just get stopped badly. And he's going to lose right here 2 lengths of positioning as he gets stopped. The one
Oh
backs up
man.
right into him just as he was starting to gather all of his momentum. And that ends up being the difference between, I don't know about winning, but being a lot closer. He angles around right here. He comes on again, and he'll end up losing a photo for second, but he has to go from 2 lengths farther back, tip to the outside. And these are the horses that all just get the jump on him because they had better positioning. Just misses third here in a photo. I thought, I don't know if he wins this race, but he's a lot closer to Quality G in this spot, and he'll be 2.5 to 3 times the price of Quality G. He's now going to make his third start off the long layoff, Barry. So can he just take one more step forward now? I think so. He missed a long period of time. He's still improving. He's still got some upside here. I like Blame the Good Times at 5 to 1.
Yeah, he definitely has some upside here. I hope the rider has learned something from that race. Um, because he really got himself in a spot. I know he was trying to get covered up, but it's tough, especially at Gulfstream, because you get locked in. I mean, these guys really put their horses in position at the top of the stretch, and if you can't get out, you kind of screwed, because then you see like what happened with this horse, where horses kind of back up in front of you, and then you have to kind of work your way around. You have to be much the best to win in that fashion. So hopefully he doesn't get trapped on the rail. He's probably like
Exactly.
one path off of it, and that way he has the leeway to kind of maneuver, and that'll make all the
And
difference.
what I like is that he has positional speed. I think what ended up happening was races in a horse's pattern, sometimes it's trial and error. I think you'll see a lot of times when a horse like this was probably too close on October the 12th, or maybe they just went a little too fast early. You almost try to overcorrect in the next race and say, let's take him back a little bit farther. And then you end up getting trapped there. And at one point, he was almost 5 lengths out of it, which he's never really been before. And that's a lot to ask him when his advantage is probably his tactical speed and the fact that he can sit in front of some of the deeper closers. So you don't want to take that away from him and then have to put him next to some of these horses that are in sixth and seventh, and they're going to start winding up. I think that was a great point that you had. And you can see it when you look at horses running lines sometimes where, oh, they went too fast that time. The next time, let's make sure they don't go that fast early. But we got caught a little too far back. Now this time, let's just get a good start, try to get a nice position, sit in third somewhere, and then let's give him every shot to win this race if he's good enough. He's going to be making his third start. He should be plenty fit. Let's just put him in the race and try to get him in a really nice spot here.
Right, and that's all you can ask. As long as they're in the right spot, and I say this all the time about Johnny V, is he puts his horses in the spot where they need to be in order to run. Now, whether
Yep.
they kick on or not is
Different
a is
story.
a
He
whole
can't
nother
control
story.
that all the
But he
time.
right, and he places them right in the right spot for them to get a clear run, and if they're good enough, they'll definitely win. Hopefully, Edgar Perez will do something similar on Saturday, because this horse I think is pretty live.
Blame the Good Times, 5 to 1 on the morning line. 7 to 2 would be my value line. I'd need at least that. If I see 4 to 1 up there, I'll play a win wager on Blame the Good Times there in race number 7. 3 stakes races on the card. Two of them are on the turf, and they're both for 3-year-olds. One of them for the fillies, one for the boys. Race number 9 is the Ginger Brew for 3-year-old fillies, going 1 mile on the turf course. Let's talk about some of the major players just to start or take a look at the horses who will get support. Ozara, very nice horse who won her career debut. Then she went up to Woodbine, tried Grade 1 Company. She's a stakes winner last time out right here at Gulfstream Park. You have a horse like Waskaisu, who was very good in her first turf start. She sat nicely just off, and she looks like she has a lot of upside here. Buttercream Babe, as well as the 12 Life's an Audible, come out of Breeders' Cup races. Life's an Audible will take a bunch of money. She's grade 2 placed for Pletcher. And I mean, when you look at the list of trainer names for this particular race, Barry, it's a who's who. You have a Delgado who's so good down in Florida. You've got Mark Cassie with runners, Christophe Clement with runner in here. Bill Mott has runners in this race. Mike Maker, Delacroix, Graham Motion, and Todd Pletcher. So some real heavy hitters when it comes to the barns for this race. And when you see these horses that are coming out of Breeders' Cup races that are making their first start of the year, especially at really short prices, I'm always going to look at them as horses that are beatable or horses that I want to take a shot against, because I don't think this is the game plan. I don't think they're for them to be 100% cranked up and ready for their best effort here. This is a starting point. Horses like this, when they come out of Breeders' Cup races, they're generally a little overbet. And this horse has a really wide post and connections that get played a ton. So starting with Life's an Audible, who's 2-1, I think she's a horse who I'm trying to play against.
Yeah, Life's an Audible is not very good, or hasn't been very good, despite her running in. You see the Miss Grillo, and then the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf, where she was clearly overmatched. Um, I could never have any confidence betting this horse from that post in this kind of race. It just seems like she's way up against it. That being said, there's a couple of horses that I kind of zeroed in on, and the first one is Time to Dazzle.
Yeah,
I know that this race is definitely going through Ozara. That's definitely the horse to beat here.
completely agree.
But Time
Completely
to
of
Dazzle
like the short prices,
will
I wouldn't tell you to throw Ozara out of a pick 4 or 5 if you're playing this race. I'd play against the 12, but I'd use Ozara and a couple others.
no, you kind of have to, because yeah, and you don't want to go too deep here, because
No.
there may be a little bit of fool's gold going on with some of these horses. San Pantaleo is one of them. I just don't think that this horse on the stretch out is really going to make that big of an impression. Maybe down the line, um, and it almost looks like this horse is kind of a rabbit for the 6. And that was the other horse that I was going to mention. But Time to Dazzle and Ozara will probably be kind of in the same realm of a trip. And the thing I like about Time to Dazzle is that first race on September 17th
The
was
race was
very, very,
really
very
good.
good. Very good. And then, they kind of threw it to the Wolves and the Jessamine. Um, and I don't think she really had a shot. They went kind of quick early, and I think she was a little bit too close to the pace. It was one of those Louis size rides, but it ended up being like
Yeah,
that
she
horse
didn't
just got
really seem
overcome.
comfortable, you know? She
Right.
just didn't
Not
seem
even a
comfortable.
little bit. Yeah,
No,
just
not
just
at
kinda
all. And
fighting him the whole time, and and those were good horses in that race, don't get me
she was
wrong.
only 4-1 there. She
Right,
took a
she
ton of
was bet.
money.
Exactly. And then off the layoff, this December 15th race, she was superior to that field. Way better. And I think that puts this horse in a prime position to improve off of that effort on the synthetic. Um, I think this race kinda sets up for even more so than Ozara, because she might actually be in front of Ozara and get the jump, and that might make all the difference. I mean, Ozara is definitely capable of running this horse down, but if this horse runs similar to what she did on that September 17th race at Woodbine, they're going to have a tough time beating her. At 15-1, that's kind of an absurd price, and I think the morning line in this race is a little bit off, um, because I think she's probably going to be half that,
She
seven,
beat the
eight
boys in her
to one,
debut.
maybe even 6 to 1, and
Yeah.
I think the 6 is also right. I mean, there's just so much to like there. 50 to 1 seems a little absurd, but I hope we get it
We
because
saw
then
this
I'll
race
definitely, push all the chips in.
the
Um,
same too, because I'm the of the horses you mentioned, I felt the same way. I thought the 4 is the horse to beat. I had 3 other horses that were on my radar to maybe include in exotics and maybe even play some sort of tries and stuff in this race, because a few of them, along with Ozara, a few of them other than Ozara could be nice prices. You mentioned Time to Dazzle. If this horse is 8 or 10 to 1, that's fair. You were just about to get to Waskaisu. Go ahead, start talking about the 6, because this is another one who I'm wanting to use too.
yeah, I mean, this horse is really like on the verge of doing something nice. The horse kind of debuted at Saratoga and it was kind of flat. But then when they stretch this horse out on the turf and you got a whole nother animal. And usually that bodes well for the next time out. And that number, I know people like to kind of, you know, doubt buyer speed figures. And yes, the turf numbers are not as good. But when you're using the same parameters for everybody to evaluate the horses, you can kind of predict what is going to happen. And that's the value of the buyer speed figure that people kind of don't realize. I know there was some talk on Twitter about it. And most of the time people don't use them as a predictive sense. They think that the number is a magic number, when in actuality it gives you an opinion about a
They're
race
Yeah,
and
patterns,
kind
way to
of can
judge.
tell
How
you
do you
what
interpret the
they're going
numbers,
to
right?
do. Right. Exactly. And I think a horse like the 6 is the prime example of that, because the horse just really turned into a different animal on November 18th. And you can only understand that that is probably going to happen again. The horse is going to improve. And this is why not in the spot, especially with a bunch of horses like the 12, who's going to take a lot of action and probably doesn't have the same kind of chance that the 6 does. So, that's how you can kind of come to fruition with these long shots or price plays in a race where you think that, a horse like Ozara is going to run well, but may not win. And that's what you're trying to do here, is trying to find the value. And I think the 5 and the 6 offer that value because they're very similar to Ozara. They just don't have the extra stakes experience that horse does.
And they'll offer you much more value than Ozara. The only other horse that I had on my radar that we haven't discussed at all is a horse who I think could get a very good trip in versions of this race, and that's the number 10 Yada, who you go through her career. She faced the boys in her debut. She was a runner-up going 5 furlongs. In her second start at Colonial, she had trouble inside. She got shuffled. It was a brutal trip down on the inside. She comes back and she breaks her maiden in her third start at Kentucky. Then she goes over to Laurel, and that race was actually really good on September the 30th. She was a step slow. She ended up moving up. She was about 6 lengths off. She was 5 wide at the top of the stretch, and that wide trip just caught up with her. She was in a photo for second that day when Brock Nardini won easily. So just misses second, comes back against Dozen Diamonds. Dozen Diamonds wins going gate to wire, and she loses to Zona Verde gate to wire. So her last 2 races have been lost in races that were won by gate to wire winners. And before that, she had legitimate trouble. She won before that and had trouble before that. So every one of her races to me makes a lot of sense. Is she the most likely winner of this race? No. But if we see this race shaping up where from the outside, Life's Inaudible has to try to get a little bit aggressive with that post. Golden Ghost has to go. Independence Avenue will be forwardly placed. Buttercream Bay will be forwardly placed. San Panaleo stretching out from sprint races. We talked about both the 5 and the 6, who I think we're expecting to be sitting a little bit, especially what I'm pointing out, hoping these horses are sitting more like third and fourth. And Ozara probably right
Yes.
behind them because she's not quite as fast as some of those horses. But down to the inside, a horse like Omaha Girl could want to be forwardly placed. There are a lot of horses who could be trying to push it early. And I do see versions of this race setting up for a horse like Ozara, who hasn't had a lot of races that have given her the chance to come running late. And she might be able to do that here, Barry.
Yeah, and getting a top-notch rider too. I've noticed the few rides that I've seen from him. He's very astute, and he's a really good judge of pace. And I think he's going to have this horse in the right spot, and that's all you can ask for in a race like this, where it's gonna be crazy at the finish, I'm sure.
Completely agree. I've been very impressed with Murphy so far and watching him out here. As one other point to let you know about, on the Saturday card at Gulfstream, those coast to coast pick fives are back now, from January 6th all the way through April 7th. Every Saturday and Sunday, 5 races from Gulfstream and Santa Anita combination, $1 minimum, 15% takeout, and 100% carryover to the next if nobody hits it. There's no consolations or anything like that. So this is a player friendly bet with the low takeout, dollar
Yeah,
minimum, and no 4 out of 5s. When you hit these things, even if they're not boxcar prices, they always pay really well.
yeah. They had me when it was 15% takeout and dollar bet. They
Yep.
got me. So
So
that's the
this
I look forward to these kind of bets, and they're very, very good.
this weekend you get Gulfstream races 9, 10, and 11, Santa Anita races 5 and 7. So we're going to talk about races 10 and 11 next. We just finished up with race number 10 or race number 9 there. Good luck playing the Ginger Brew. We will shorten up and head to the Dirtberry on the for the Limehouse. This is a $100,000 stakes race for newly turned 3-year-olds. Taking a look at some in here who will get support. Valiant Force coming in from the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf Sprint. This is a horse who has been a good sprinter, and now they're going to, and on the turf, now they're going to take a swing on the dirt and see if this horse can run on the dirt. This is something we see with a lot of horses with 3-year-olds. Why not? There's a bunch of big 3-year-old races. Even if you don't want to stretch out, there's big money in sprint races, and there could be, it just opens up a lot more opportunities for you. So Valiant Force is the horse to start with in here. Cuban Thunder is going to take some money too, coming off a runner-up effort last time out. When you have a horse like Valiant Force, who's certainly classy, but trying something like this for the first time, you're always going to have people lining up against them. Cuban Thunder, while good, now will be cutting back to a dirt sprint, and we haven't seen him show any success sprinting on the dirt. So the horses who are 7-5 and 9-5 on the morning line have never showed us success sprinting on the dirt.
Yeah, that's why this race is kind of bizarre. You have a horse in Valiant Force that's 7-5, who essentially is a dead closer on the turf. It doesn't bode well for the chances on the dirt at Gulfstream, where
From a class
anybody that's
standpoint, does he tower over this field? Absolutely. Is
sure.
he classier in his resume? But you're 100% right. Sprinting on the dirt at Gulfstream in this race with a bunch of weird variables, he's going to be up against it in here.
It just doesn't. Yeah, yeah, I would think so. Even the other horse that's 9-5 on the morning line might struggle. I mean,
Completely
where are these
agree.
horses going to be? And it's like it's that's why I think that the morning line is off, and things will be a little different. I would be really surprised if Valiant Force is favored. You might get
Or
bet
these
clearly,
horses
maybe
are
3-1.
this much of a difference between the next tier of horses. Because I agreed with you. Could they win? Could they go really fast? Or maybe these horses sit closer than we're thinking. But on paper, Cuban Thunder is a horse who's been well out of it going longer. And he's not very quick either. So I'm looking at these two horses being well behind. The one I wanted to make sure I had in all
No,
exotics is Sir
and
Flash from the inside. I think I need him in a pick 4.
yeah, I actually like that
Yeah.
one too.
Um, I'm looking at him, Barry, and just his form makes sense to me as a dirt sprinter. He's shown improvement in each of his starts so far. That last race at Tampa on December the 2nd, he broke in, he was bumped a little bit. He was actually towards the back early after he'd been on the lead in his first couple. He ends up moving through the inside. He's traveling well. He gets an opening. He pushes through to battle for the lead, and then he just gets a little bit tired. But he ran a good race, showed us something, moved into it, and now from the rail with just a better start, I expect him to be a lot more forwardly placed in this race.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, because you have Luis Saez, who's definitely going to get this horse in the race. I think this horse gained a lot of experience in that December 2nd inaugural at Tampa and can only get better. You see the progression. The horse has improved every time. Why would it stop now? And then the other horse that kind of caught my radar is Ship to Shore, the three. I think those efforts, the turf efforts, you see, got beat by No Name Mets, who was a monster at the time in midsummer, um, and then got beat by Noted, who's pretty damn good,
Yep.
3-year-old turf horse. Um, but if you take those two races out, you can see that this horse is improving.
The dirt races were
I
good.
I don't
And
know, like one of the right. They were decent enough and competitive with this field. Now, a lot of that horse's chances hinge on like the 6 and 7, and maybe even the 5 kind of getting into it up front early, which is certainly possible. But I don't think they're going to go fast enough for a horse like the 2 or the 4 to run them down on the dirt. Ship
especially
to
on at
Shore
their
might be a,
prices.
a, a little bit forwardly placed. Right, exactly.
Yes.
You kind of have to bet against those two.
Yeah, you do. You do. And I agree. Ship to Shore is for me a pick four player. Absolutely. I had the 1, 3, and 7 as must-use horses for me in the multi-race exotics here because I do think the 7 has enough speed, tactical speed, to stay in striking range here. In his debut at Hawthorne, those races you got to be quick and keep up in a lot of those sprint races at Hawthorne, and he sat a nice trip and was able to show that he can pass horses. Then they stretched him out in his last 3, and he's been showing speed going longer. His last race, it was on the synthetic. He was just in a really bad spot throughout a lot of this race. He's the number 8 in here. And this was one of those situations where you could just see he was never comfortable, but he came on again and in between, even after having a tough trip. He ran in spots to me that pointed out that blinkers could really help a horse like this. Maybe just get him a little bit more focused because I do think there's something there with Steal or Mischief now cutting back and offering you some nice value from the outside. He ends up getting caught in between horses here while wide, and that's just a tough spot to be in. They don't really know what to do. Do I go? Do I take back? Well, I don't want to be way out of it. And so now loses his positioning here. Then he tries to come on again afterwards, and he kind of moves right back up in between horses here and gets stopped. And it's right there. That's a tough start to the race for him for a horse like this. And he should be fitter cutting back.
The only problem I had with this horse is, like I said, the morning line seems a little bit off, and you're gonna get Irad there
Money.
on a
Absolutely.
horse
You're going
that
to get the
he's
IRAD
probably
money.
gonna have to get a little bit aggressive with. He's definitely gonna take some money. And he might not be favored, but he's probably gonna be around 5 to 2, 3 to 1 ish. And to me, that was a little bit too low, although he does merit a good chance. So you gotta have to watch the board here, or
Completely
try to
agree.
predict what the odds are going to look like, because there is a situation where that horse goes off 5 to 1, but there's also a situation where that horse goes off 5 to 2. So you kind of have to kind of evaluate what you're doing, and try to you know kind of go for the value where you think it's going to be. Um, but I'm definitely against Valiant Force and Cuban Thunder. If one of those two horses win, it's just not meant to be for me.
Yep. 1, 3, and 7 are horses I'm going to use all over the place in this one. As Barry Keaton on Ship to Shore, we're both on Sir Flash a little, and I like the outside horse Stealer Mischief a bit more if we can get something similar to that price. Let's finish up in race number 11. It's the Dania Beach. This one is for 3-year-olds going a mile on the turf course. We have a field of 10. Agate Road comes out of the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf. He's a grade 2 winner. He's another one that last race in the Breeders' Cup draws an outside post. He's 8-5 on the morning line. He's a deep closer in here. Not that he ran poorly in the Breeders' Cup. He just ran into some horses that were a little bit better than him that day. He was only beaten a couple lengths. So can't really knock a lot of what he's done. But again, starting point for him, although I think I prefer him to the other one that we talked about, Life's Inaudible. With his running style, the outside probably doesn't hurt
Yes,
him quite as
definitely.
much if he's just going to drop back and make one late run, right? I don't think he gets parked out wide, and that probably doesn't impact him. They just want to be 7th or 8th early and then press the button late.
Yeah, that's exactly it. But again, I just don't have any confidence in this horse. I know he ran okay in the Pilgrim, did okay in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, but there's not much to grab onto. You know, unless a horse just shows some really, just physically got bigger from the last time we saw this horse. Like, when horses develop, they kind of get bigger, wider, that sort of thing, which is certainly possible. You see a lot of pleasure horses do that. They mature and they kind of get ahead of the pack. Now, it's tough to take that horse at 8-5 on the far outside like this in a race like this because there's a lot that could be going on here. I ended up on number 7, Palm Tree, and I think this horse is kind of versatile, and I do like the rider switch to Jose Ortiz, but I think this horse can be wherever they put him. If this horse wants to lead or be closer to the lead, I think this horse can sit that trip. If this horse needs to be farther back, which he showed in his last race, I think he can do that too. But I do appreciate the fact that the blinkers do come on, which means I think they're going to try to be more forwardly placed. And you see that the competition this horse has been running with, there's noted again twice. Um, saw the horse in the Bourbon finished second to Can Group, who's a very good horse, and this horse wasn't that far off that. Just didn't get a great trip from the inside. I think Declan Cannon tried to do everything he could that race to try to get this horse out and just couldn't do it.
So we're
Comes back on
watching.
December 9th in the pulpit and
That's what we're going to watch
oh, go
right
ahead.
here. We have the 4 and the 5. Those are the two horses that you and I like in this race because I like Reminder and you like Palm Tree. I actually have
Yes.
Palm Tree as my second pick, and they're both in this race. And you saw Reminder had a little bit more of a slow start, but they're not far away from each other. And they both don't have the best of trips in here. And I
No,
think
not
they're
at all.
both very, very live. You see, here comes the 5 into the picture now. That's the horse that you like. That's Barry's horse, Palm Tree. Reminder, the horse who I like a little bit, not far behind Palm Tree, and you're going to see come into the picture pretty soon. For Reminder, he starts to angle out and he alters course. He has to come back inside and then he has to go all the way around again. He's out in the 6-7 path late and he just misses. It's almost like he cost himself. Watch the 4 and the 5 here as they both start to move. So your 5 is with the blue cap, 4's inside. Now he kind of pulls like he's going to go down to the inside right here. But then the 4 goes all the way back around to the outside, which just ends up kind of costing him having to reroute. And he goes all the way around. Your 5 is just a must-use horse because of his running style. He gets the nice jump and just misses in a wicked beat. Here comes the 4, Reminder, way outside, closer to the outside rail than the inside rail. And I think both of these horses are live. And as you pointed out, I actually think both of them can be a lot closer than they were in that race early on.
Yeah, you gotta have to think that Jose Ortiz is going to be a little bit more aggressive, especially with the blinkers on, and put this horse in a decent spot. Because if you look at that race again, it looked like Irad on the 8, unnoted, was kind of clocking Palm Tree.
I know.
when Palm Tree made his move,
He went right after.
Noted did right on the inside. So, like, it looks like that's how IRAD handicapped that race. Is saying that Palm
We,
Tree is the horse that we need to watch out for. And as soon as that one made his move, he made his move on the inside, and kind of had to wait a little bit and then went around, but he knew that was the horse to beat. And I think this now, blinkers on, the equalizer, and this horse being a little bit further in front might get this horse to victory.
because they went pretty quick in that race. So they were both the 5 and the 7 were a little farther back than they'll probably be in this race, where they may not go sub 46 to the half mile in here. Palm Tree adds the blinkers and now goes second start off the bench. So for this particular horse, there's reasons to believe that he could show improvement. Blinkers on, second start putting together off of the short break, and maybe sitting a little closer. For a reminder, that was just his first turf start. So this is a horse who had a bad beginning, kind of had a few tough decisions to make, and had to alter course a couple times, and should improve second start on the grass. So at around 5-1, I think both of these horses are really fair and great ways to try to close out the card at Gulfstream.
Absolutely. You know, the old bailout with a with a non-favorite in the last race. That's what we're looking for.
So there's the look at the Dania Beach, the third of 3 stakes races on the Saturday card at Gulfstream Park. Keep in mind, could be some wet weather, but we talked about some a couple dirt races. Barry also gave out a synthetic play in the opener, and some of these races, if they were removed from the turf and moved over to the synthetic, fingers crossed that we wouldn't get as many changes for some of them. That's one of the reasons they like to put that synthetic surface on there. Barry, my friend, as we finish up, tell the folks out there about Big Mondays, going in circles with Chuck Simon. It's that time where we're starting to get a lot of Eclipse Award ballots out there. So the next few weeks, we'll hear a lot of Eclipse Award stuff about the whole voting and how it should be in particular horses in division. So that's a big buzz thing on horse racing Twitter right now. What are some of the things you guys have coming up over the next couple weeks?
Yeah, we're gonna start talking about the Derby. You know, there's some Derby points races like you alluded to earlier with the Jerome, and um, it's time to start ramping up and trying to get those Derby horses together. We're gonna do that next Monday, and then we're gonna try to ramp things up with our website racinghub.com. So we got a lot in the works. It's just trying to get this new year started right.
Let's have a fantastic 2024. Big thank you to all of you out there for tuning in and watching and listening along with us. Remember, all throughout the Gulfstream Park Championship meet, if you need past performances, DRF picks, clocker reports, they've got them for you. Shop.drf.com. Clocker reports every racing day for Gulfstream and for Santa Anita. Every single weekend, Barry and I are going to be here with you talking some Gulfstream or some Santa Anita. Maybe some weekends we'll take a look at some other big races if it's a big Tampa weekend or a big Oaklawn weekend. But it's a fun time of the year with big races all over the place. And DRF.com is the place you need to be. My friend, let's crush it this year in 2024. Can we stay out of the hospital too? Can that be just our resolution?
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Yes, please, please. I don't
That's
want any more visits.
no more of
And hopefully
those.
we can shake off the seconitis because we had seconitis all weekend last weekend.
We did. It was brutal. You missed a bad one, and we missed a couple that could have been very, very nice. So let's get smooth trips, happy and healthy horses. That's what we always want as the gambler. Because you know what? If my horse gets a good trip and this isn't good enough, I can just wipe my hands and move on to the next race very easily. Super easy for me to get over when I just know that, yep, they got a shot, weren't good enough. Boom, let's go to the next one.
You got to have a short memory in this game where you're going to just worry yourself to death.
Folks, have a fantastic weekend. Let's make some money. Thanks so much for hanging out with us, and we'll be back here in a couple more days talking more racing. Good luck.